The human child's skull burst apart, scattering across the Galactic Council chamber floor as the alien executioner fired his disruptor without hesitation. That innocent blood ignited humanity's rage, unleashing the wrath of Earth's most ancient warships hidden away for centuries, awaiting this exact moment of treachery. Captain Logan Carter stood rigid on the bridge of the HSS Indomitable which orbited Earth. His fists were clenched, his jaw tight as he watched the live broadcast. The repugnant Ithorian Councillor Xanth had smugly declared the Council's ban on all human FTL travel, imprisoning mankind within its home system. Then, for the supposed crime of a human boy defacing an alien shrine, they had executed the crying child in cold blood. "Let this be a warning to your primitive species," Xanth sneered at the camera. "Human defiance will no longer be tolerated." The feed cut out. Logan's voice was a hoarse whisper. "They murdered a child." Commander Hawkins gripped the railing, his knuckles white. "Your orders, sir." A frigid fury settled in Logan's eyes as he turned toward his crew. "Signal the fleet, power up the Nova cannons, prepare for an FTL jump directly to the Galactic Council headquarters." This was the day humanity had long feared, yet secretly prepared for. The day the aliens bared their true fangs and crossed a line they could never undo. The day they threatened Earth and shattered the very laws they claimed to uphold. This was the day humanity would make them pay, with blood. Deep within the Rocky Mountains, stone cracked and parted as enormous camouflaged doors swung open. Captain Logan Carter descended into the hidden depths, flanked by his highest-ranking Earth Defense Force officers. The long concrete corridors were dimly lit by flickering fluorescent bulbs, the click of booted heels echoing through the silence. At the hallway's end stood a massive blast door, solid steel several feet thick. Logan stepped forward, placing his palm against the biometric scanner. It beeped in recognition. With a slow, heavy grind, the door began to open, revealing a cavernous underground hangar shrouded in shadow. Logan flicked a switch, and floodlights snapped on. The officers inhaled sharply, eyes widening. Before them stood rows upon rows of warships, their hulls forged from a strange iridescent metal that shimmered under the light. Their designs were angular, sleek, predatory, unlike anything the officers had seen before. Logan turned, his expression as hard as steel. "Gentlemen, meet the Sigma fleet, constructed in secret during humanity's early days in space, hidden as a last resort. When the Council trapped us within our home system, they had no idea what ace we had up our sleeve." Commander Hawkins stepped forward, tracing his fingers along the prow of one vessel, his brow furrowed in disbelief. "I thought the Sigma fleet was just a legend." Logan shook his head. "The Sigma fleet is very real, and now it's time to show the galaxy what human ingenuity and resilience can truly achieve. The Council seeks to imprison us. Let's see how they feel when we appear at their doorstep with technology centuries beyond their own." He swept his gaze over his officers. "With the power of the Sigma fleet, we will avenge our people and carve out humanity's rightful place among the stars." The officers exchanged glances, faces set with grim resolve. They nodded as one. Logan straightened his uniform, striding toward the lead ship. The others fell into step behind him. "It's time to remind the galaxy that humanity bows to no one," Logan declared, his voice ringing through the hangar. "They've pushed us too far. Now we push back. Today we take the fight to the Council's doorstep. Today they suffer the consequences of their treachery. Today we unleash the Sigma fleet." Light years away, Councillor Xanth lounged on a floating divan within his opulent chambers, the embodiment of indulgence. The craggy-faced Aoran sipped a glowing green liquor, savoring its burn as it slid down his throat, potent enough to strip paint from a starship hull. It might as well have been water to him. A chime echoed through the room. Xanth lazily glanced up as a holoscreen flickered to life, revealing the worried face of his aide Wyatt. The diminutive Aeon's gray skin had flushed an anxious violet. "Counselor, our long-range sensors have detected an incoming fleet of unidentified vessels approaching at high velocity," Yik reported, his voice taut. Xanth waved a dismissive hand, his many rings glinting. "Then send a patrol to intercept, likely some minor upstart race seeking attention." Yik shook his head, his movements sharp with suppressed panic. "So the patrol is already gone, annihilated the instant they entered weapons range. We didn't even get a visual on their attackers." Xanth bolted upright, his drink sloshing over the goblet's edge. "What impossible? What kind of weaponry do they possess?" He strode to an ornate control panel, fingers flying over the interface. The lights dimmed as a massive holographic display burst to life, illuminating the chamber with a glowing star map of the Ein system. A cluster of red markers streaked toward the central blue orb, his homeworld. Xanth's throat went dry. The sheer number of vessels was staggering. "By the gods," he whispered. "Hundreds of them. How could an unknown species possess such a fleet without our knowledge?" A chilling tendril of dread coiled in his gut. A terrible realization began to take shape. He turned back to the holoscreen, locking eyes with Yik's terrified gaze. "Tell me everything about these ships. Their configuration, their capabilities, leave nothing out," Xanth ordered, his voice eerily calm, masking the panic churning within. Because if his fears were correct, then he had made a grievous miscalculation, one that might doom his entire people. Yik's report only deepened his terror. The vessels were unlike any known warships. Sleek, impossibly fast, their hulls composed of an unidentifiable alloy immune to scans. Their formations were flawless, their weapons plasma cannons that shredded shields as if they were air missiles that moved faster than sight and never missed, beams of concentrated energy that sliced through ships with surgical precision. But the worst part, the symbol emblazoned upon their prows. A sigil feared across the galaxy, spoken of only in whispers, a symbol of legend and nightmare. The insignia of the Terran Dominion. Humanity had returned. Not as explorers, not as diplomats, but as conquerors wielding technology far beyond the Ein's wildest imagining. Xanth staggered back from the display, his twin hearts hammering. His mind flashed to the human child executed in the council chambers, the moment that had ignited this storm. He had miscalculated. Severely, they all had. Now his people would pay the price. As the Terran fleet closed in, Xanth wondered if anything in the universe could stop the oncoming storm. Somehow he doubted it. He nodded to Samir, who swiftly typed a command into his console. The view screen split, shrinking Zahn's image to a corner as a new visual took center stage. It displayed the wreckage of the destroyed Aoran battlecruiser, its twisted metal still glowing cherry red, but it was what surrounded the debris field that made Xanth gasp. Swarms of small agile craft poured out of the Sigma fleet's hangar bays, darting toward the remaining Aoran ships like enraged hornets. They moved with impossible speed and precision, weaving through defensive fire effortlessly. Then they struck. Beams of searing blue-white energy sliced through shields and hulls alike, leaving glowing scars in their wake. Missiles spiraled from launch tubes, corkscrewing through space to impact with devastating force the Aoran return. Fire was sporadic, panicked, there. Targeting systems unable to lock onto the human fighters, confused by the strange material of their hulls. In mere minutes, a full third of the Aoran fleet was reduced to drifting wreckage. The remaining ships fell into disarray, their formations shattered, their captains shouting contradictory orders. It was a rout throughout it all. The Sigma fleet remained still, weapons primed, but silent. They didn't need to engage directly. Their fighter screen was more than enough to obliterate the outmatched Aoran warships. Logan turned back to Xanth, his expression grim. "I won't ask again, Counselor. Yield and let this be the end of it." Xanth slumped back in his chair, the fight draining from him. He looked around at his bridge crew, seeing the same realization etched into their faces. They had gravely underestimated the humans, and now they were paying the price. With a trembling hand, Xanth reached out and terminated the transmission. The view screen went dark. Logan turned to Hawkins, his eyes cold. "Signal the fleet, all ships, weapons tight, give them a chance to comply." Hawkins nodded, relaying the order. The bridge fell into tense silence, every eye glued to the tactical display as red and blue icons flickered across the screen. Then slowly the red icons began to shift. One by one the Aoran ships powered down their weapons and drives. They were surrendering. A cheer erupted from the human crew. Fists pumped in the airbacks were slapped. They had done it. They had brought the mighty Galactic Council to its knees. But Logan did not join in the celebration. He simply stared at the display, his face an unreadable mask. He knew this was only the beginning. The Council would not forgive this humiliation easily. There would be repercussions, political and military. The road ahead would be long and hard, paved with conflict and sacrifice. But one thing was certain: humanity would no longer be content to live under the Council's thumb. Today, they had proven they could stand up to those who sought to control them. Today, they had taken their first step toward a new future. A future where humanity charted its own course among the stars. And may God help anyone who tried to stand in their way. Xanth's bulging eyes darted across the readouts, the numbers and symbols blurring into a maelstrom of impending doom. The human ships had vanished from the screens as if they had never been there at all, but the Counselor knew better. They were out there, waiting, invisible predators ready to strike. He slammed a webbed fist on the console, barking orders in the guttural Aoran language. Surround them, box them in, and destroy them. The Aoran fleet lurched into motion, ponderous capital ships straining to outmaneuver their nimble adversaries. They spread out in a vast sphere, weapons bristling from every surface as they attempted to entrap the Terran Sigma fleet. On the Indomitable's bridge, Logan leaned back in his command chair, a smirk playing across his lips as he watched the alien's clumsy attempt at tactics. Beside him, Samir frowned at the display. "They're trying to cut off our escape routes. Should I order the fleet to pull back?" Logan shook his head, his eyes glittering with anticipation. "Negative, they want to play at being the superior species. Let's show them what humanity is truly capable of. All ships initiate Ghost Protocol." A chorus of acknowledgements lit up the comm board on the view screen. The Sigma fleet seemed to ripple and distort, its contours blurring before vanishing entirely as the advanced stealth field engaged. In seconds, the human vessels had disappeared from both visual and sensor detection, wraiths haunting the void. Xanth gaped at his displays in disbelief as his crew erupted into a cacophony of panicked shouts and warning klaxons. The human ships were just gone, as if they had never existed. "Impossible!" the counselor roared. His words dissolved into a scream as the Aoran flagship convulsed under a titanic impact. Sparks geysered from shattered consoles, the deck pitching wildly beneath Xanth's feet. Across the fleet, the carnage was the same. Blooms of fire and shrapnel bursting from a dozen ships as the first salvo from the invisible Sigma fleet struck. True alien shields flared and died under the onslaught, their hull plates crumpling like foil beneath undetectable projectiles. Xanth staggered to the flagship's viewport, his twin hearts pounding in terror. He watched in mute horror as his fleet was torn apart piece by an enemy he could not see. On the Indomitable, Logan observed the one-sided slaughter with cold satisfaction. Let the Aorans feel the same fear and helplessness they had inflicted on so many. Let them reap the bitter harvest of their cruelty and arrogance. "Cease fire," he ordered at last, his voice heavy with finality. As quickly as it had begun, the barrage halted, leaving the once proud Aoran fleet shattered and leaderless. Smoldering hulks drifted in the silent void, the pitiful remnants of the Council's might. Logan stared at Xanth through the comm screen, his gaze searing in its intensity. When he spoke, each word was edged in steel. "Look upon your fleet now, Counselor. See how it has been humbled. Your vaunted power has been exposed as nothing more than a brittle facade. Just as you held the life of that innocent child in your hands, so now I hold the fate of your entire species." He leaned forward, his face filling the screen, his eyes boring into the trembling Aoran. "I want you to feel that fear, Xanth. I want you to know in the depths of your soul how close you are to annihilation. How easy it would be for me to give the order and consign your wretched kind to oblivion." Logan smiled then, a cold, terrible thing devoid of warmth or mercy. "But I won't. Not yet. I spare you now for one purpose only, to be a messenger. You will return to your council and you will tell them what transpired here. You will make them understand that the age of their dominion is over." His voice dropped, filled with quiet menace. "Humanity will no longer tolerate the yoke of oppression. We will claim our rightful place among the stars, and we will brook no opposition. Those who stand against us will be ground to dust." He raised a hand in mocking benediction. "Go now, Xanth. Run back to your masters and pray that when next we meet, I am feeling merciful. For your sake, and for the sake of your entire race." The transmission cut off, leaving Xanth staring at a blank screen, the taste of ashes thick on his tongue. The galaxy had changed this day, and he had been the catalyst. And together we will savor the taste of the Council's terror. As the screen went dark, Logan turned to his crew, a fire burning in his eyes. "The game pieces are moving into position. Prepare the fleet. It's time we bring the fight to the Council's doorstep." The combined human and Voran fleet tore out of hyperspace at the fringes of the Galactic Council's home system, a densely packed cluster of heavily populated worlds and immense orbital installations. Instantly, warning klaxons wailed across the system as the Council's defenses came online, an impenetrable barrier of warships assembling around the central planet, the heart of the Council's dominion. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Logan surveyed the gathered forces with a discerning gaze. They've pulled back their fleets from across the galaxy. The core of their military strength is here. Samir scowled at the tactical readout. Even with the Voran numbers, we're still outmatched in raw firepower. Logan nodded grimly. which is why we won't be engaging them head-on. We have to be tactical about this. He keyed the fleet-wide comm, all vessels, commence Phase 1. The human and Voran ships began to maneuver, not toward the waiting Council armada, but in a broad arc skirting the system's perimeter, angling for a massive space station bristling with sensor arrays and communication antennae. That's their primary system-wide comms and surveillance nexus, Logan explained. We knock that out, we blind them and sow chaos in their coordination. As the fleet closed on the station, the Council warships guarding it accelerated to intercept. Just before they entered firing range, the human vessels shimmered and multiplied, each ship abruptly fracturing into a dozen mirror images. The Council ships wavered, thrown into confusion as their scanners were inundated with false returns. By the time they realized the ruse, it was too late. The true human ships, shrouded by the sensor phantoms, were already on top of them. The void around the station erupted into a vicious melee, the Council vessels fighting valiantly but outclassed by the humans' technological edge and the Voran's sheer savagery. Within minutes, the station's defenses were overrun, and a fusillade of human quantum torpedoes reduced the massive construct to an expanding cloud of wreckage. Across the system, Council ships reeled as their communications were cut, their fleet-wide data network dissolving into white noise. Amidst the disarray, the human and Voran ships pressed their advantage, hammering key targets, shipyards, weapons emplacements, resupply points, with surgical precision. On the Indomitable, Logan watched as the Council's tight defensive formation started to fray, their ships floundering to react to threats flaring up across the system. Phase 1 accomplished. Commence Phase 2. The human and Voran fleet regrouped, no longer skirting the main Council armada but driving straight at it, weapons hot. Logan opened a channel to the Council flagship. This is Captain Logan Carter of the Earth Sigma fleet. Your comms are severed, your defenses are buckling, and your fleet is in chaos. Surrender now, and your lives will be spared. There was a protracted silence, then a familiar visage filled the screen. Counselor Xanth, his features contorted with spiteful defiance. We will never yield to you, human scum. We will battle to the last vessel, the last warrior, the last gasp. Logan regarded him icily. So be it. He cut the channel and turned to his crew. Signal all ships. No mercy given. Let's end this. The human and Voran ships plunged into the heart of the Council fleet, weapons blazing as the alien vessels swarmed to meet them. The void lit up with the glare of 1,000 exploding suns as the two sides clashed, energy beams and missiles crisscrossing the gulf between them. Logan gripped the arms of his command chair as the Indomitable shuddered under a barrage of impacts, its shields flaring. On the view screen, a human destroyer erupted into a ball of plasma as a Council dreadnought siege cannon found its mark. A Voran cruiser, trailing flames and debris, rammed a Council frigate, both ships disappearing in a blinding flash of mutual annihilation. Concentrate fire on their command ships. Logan barked, his eyes never leaving the tactical display. We cut off the head, the body dies. The human fleet shifted formation, the Indomitable at the tip of the spear as they bore down on the Council's leadership vessels. The alien ships moved to screen their commanders, pouring a storm of fire into the human advance. The Council battleship, its hull pitted and scorched, loomed before the Indomitable, its grav cannons hammering at the human dreadnought's shield. Logan gritted his teeth as consoles sparked and exploded around him, the bridge filling with acrid smoke. Divert power to forward shields and weapons, he commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos. Samir, find me a weak point. Samir's hands flew over his console, his brow furrowed in concentration. There. A fluctuation in their AR shield grid, coordinates Gamma 615. The Indomitable swung hard to starboard, its prow aimed squarely at the Council battleship's stern. A heartbeat later, its guns erupted, a searing lance of concentrated energy scorching across the void to impact directly on the weak point in the alien ship's defenses. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Council vessel seemed to bulge outward, cracks racing across its hull as secondary explosions chain through its interior. With a final soundless detonation, the mighty warship shattered, torn apart from within by the catastrophic reactor breach. Through the expanding field of debris, Logan caught a glimpse of the Council flagship, a massive dreadnought bristling with weapons. Xantha's ship, the seat of the Council's power and arrogance. Logan leaned forward in his chair, his eyes narrowing. All ships, converge on the flagship. It's time to cut the head off the snake. The human and Voran ships smashed into the Council armada, weapons blazing. Beams of searing energy sliced through enemy hulls, missiles corkscrewed through the void to detonate against failing shields in blossoms of fire. The Council ships returned fire, but the Allies' advanced technology and sheer ferocity overwhelmed them. At the heart of the chaos, the Indomitable and Xantha's flagship pounded each other in a vicious duel, lances of energy crackling back and forth between the two mighty vessels. Logan gripped his command chair as the Indomitable's guns thundered in response, a relentless barrage hammering into the Council flagship's stern. The enemy ship's shields flared, flickered, then died under the onslaught. Flame blossomed from its engine section as the Indomitable's weapons found their mark. The flagship spun out of control, trailing debris and plasma. And then, in the chaos, a hail came through. Logan's blood ran cold as a covert operative's face appeared, pale and drawn. "Captain, Xanth is alive. He escaped. And he has a weapon, a doomsday device. Something that can destroy entire star systems. If we don't stop him." Logan's jaw tightened. "We end this. Now."